From Peter trying to marry Chris for his father-in-law's fortune, to the family trying to cover up Stewie's serious head injury, these are the times Family Guy took their jokes way too far. Our first running gag that probably should have never left the writer's room is in the episode Fresh Air. In this episode, Peter suddenly becomes interested in getting on Chris's good side after ignoring him for so long. Did he finally get the urge to become a good father? Nope. The reason for this sudden interest is that his father-in-law, Mr. Pewterschmidt, decided to leave his fortune under Chris's name. And Peter really wants to get his hands on that fortune, which then Peter comes up with the outrageous plan to marry his son. Yeah, in theory, I guess it would make sense, but in reality, it's just completely insane. This premise already sounds disturbing enough, but it only gets worse from here. In hopes of winning Chris over, Peter kills an innocent deaf child, believing he was a kid that was bullying Chris at school, showing Chris his decapitated head. Yeah, a decapitated head of a deaf kid. I guess he never heard him coming? Huh? And then proposes to him with Lois's ring. How romantic. The episode takes a turn when Chris accepts the proposal, purely because he wants to spend more time with his father, which isn't as funny as it is a sad commentary on their relationship, highlighting the dysfunction of their family. Peter continues to go to great lengths to impress Chris and the family, including buying them expensive gifts and acting extremely inappropriately in an attempt to seduce them. Come on, Peter, have some decency. Never mind, that went out the window a while ago. This whole episode was a wild ride, and soon enough, Lois becomes suspicious of Peter's motives, which honestly shouldn't have been too hard to figure out, discovering that he only wants her father's fortune. This episode really doesn't shy away from portraying Peter as a selfish and greedy character, and in fairness, Family Guy does often show Peter as a pretty despicable father, husband, and person in general. But something about this episode showed him in an even worse light. The episode reaches its climax when Peter and Chris are about to get married, before Lois, fortunately, stops the wedding at the last minute. It's a relief that the episode didn't actually go through with the marriage, but the premise and execution of this episode were still extremely controversial. Fresh Air faced a lot of criticism for its disturbing plotline, with many viewers finding it to be in poor taste. An issue a lot of viewers had with the episode is that it's not only disturbing, but it lacked a lot of the comedic aspects viewers expect and love from a Family Guy episode. And it seemed the writers were just going for shock value. And while they nailed that, it clearly was a joke that went too far. Another joke that shared similar characteristics with our last was in the episode Stewie is Enceinte. In this episode, Stewie gets himself pregnant without Brian's consent using his DNA. Yeah, I think you can already tell why this is on our list. The episode featured a ghastly childbirth scene where Stewie gives birth to his children in Brian's car, which none of us needed to see, and the next scene isn't much better, showing Stewie and Brian's deformed, half-human, half-dog offspring running around. Is this a comedy or a horror show? Another issue with this joke to keep in mind is Peter's complete disregard for the whole situation. Not only does he have little reaction to his son getting pregnant with his dog, he also offers no support, which adds to the disturbing nature of the episode. Quite the father figure Peter is. The lack of concern for Stewie's well-being and the overall premise is unsettling and makes the episode hard to watch. The joke also raises concerns about consent, as Stewie gets himself pregnant with Brian's DNA without his knowledge, and the show does very little to address the importance of consent, which is a serious problem in many eyes. Eventually, Stewie and Brian abandon the children at an animal shelter, wrapping up one of the series' most bizarre and fan-despised episodes. The episode had the potential to teach a valuable lesson, but it was completely overshadowed by its outrageous and disturbing plotline, along with its downright terrifying visuals which were involved with the joke that went too far. And worst of all, without a good punchline. We just hope viewers have finally got the image of those half-human, half-dog babies' faces out of their heads. Speaking of an image we'd all like to forget, our next joke that went too far starts with Brian ripping to shreds a poor little squirrel. In this episode, Stewie and Chris nurse an injured squirrel back to health after Peter accidentally cut down a tree in the yard with his chainsaw. Hang on, this seems kind of wholesome. This premise sets up a rare, heartwarming moment. But it's very short-lived. As the squirrel takes its first steps after making a full recovery, Brian notices and instinctively kills it in an extremely brutal fashion. This scene is violent and disturbing, especially considering the lead-up to it. It really had no need to be so graphic. This, again, seems to be Family Guy opting for shock tactics rather than comedy. The joke went in a confusing way after the shocking death of the squirrel. Stewie and Chris immediately turned on each other, blaming the other for not protecting the squirrel properly. Chris made the point that Stewie was best friends with Brian and should have known what happens when a dog sees a defenseless squirrel. But honestly, this point could be made for both brothers. What did they expect? Chris takes another dig at Stewie about his obsession with social media, and how at the time of the attack, he was more concentrated on his Instagram video than the squirrel's safety, which also shows a sad reflection on modern-day life. See? Family Guy can go deep sometimes. As the episode continues, it tries to inject humor into the situation by having the brothers go on a wild revenge spree. Surprisingly, without any revenge on Brian himself. In fact, apart from the brutal killing, Brian has little to no screen time, almost using him as a plot tool and nothing else. Regardless, the revenge scene ultimately falls flat. Many viewers felt the humor in this episode was forced, and didn't match the serious tone of the situation. Boys and Squirrels faced criticism for its violent and disturbing scenes, with many finding it to be in poor taste. And as poor taste goes, this next Family Guy joke is a doozy. In the episode Brian Griffin's House of Pain, Meg and Chris accidentally knock Stewie down the stairs, giving him a gruesome head injury that exposes his brain. But instead of rushing him to a hospital, they try to cover it up. Because, yeah, that's what good siblings do. But wait, it gets worse. When the always responsible Peter finds out, he's not only okay with the situation, he actually encourages it. Guess we know where the kids got their caring nature from. Peter comes up with the insane idea to throw Stewie behind Lois's car as she's backing out of the driveway, so she can run him over and take the blame. Yikes. To Peter's initial shock, Lois's first reaction was like the rest of the family's, not for the well-being of Stewie, but rather trying to not get in trouble for what she did. It really shows how the family would go to shift the blame, while also showcasing how backwards the family's priorities really are. Fans of the show thought the whole situation was extremely out of character, especially the reaction of the normally kind-hearted Lois. Seeing Stewie's head injury worsen throughout the episode makes for a tough watch for the audience, and his exposed brain doesn't make it easier. The episode faced criticism for its depiction of such a serious injury, and the family's disturbing reaction to it. The show's creators have always pushed boundaries with their humor, but this episode's handling of a serious situation seemed to really cross a line for many viewers, and clearly went way too far. So, from the Griffin family trying to cover up Stewie's gruesome head injury, to Peter trying to marry his own son for his father-in-law's fortune, these were the times Family Guy took their jokes way too far.